Recording in progress.
You are on.
I call the meeting to order. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Director Carr. Present. Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Present.
Director Herndon.
Present.
Director Leonard.
Present.
Director O'Halloran.
Present.
Director Simpson.
Present.
Director Taylor.
Present.
And President Peterson.
Present.
We have 9 present.
The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Members, please mute your devices.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Bienvenidos. Esta junta se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta en español, por favor marque al teléfono 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de la junta 608-130-5362. Le repito, para escuchar esta junta en español, marque al teléfono 312-626-6799 y ponga el número de la junta 608-130-5362. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Before we move to our agenda, the chair will ask that we share in a moment of silence to commemorate the passing of the following members of the MPS community. Davoni Montrell Turner Basie, a student at Banner Prep School who passed away on April 20th, 2021. Roy Thomas IV, a student at James Madison Academic Campus who passed away on April 22nd, 2021. Justin Williams, a student from Nisquera Elementary School who passed away on April 23rd, 2021. Linda Becker, a retired teacher from Elm Creative Arts School who passed away on April 26th, 2021. Nancy Fons, a retired paraprofessional from U.S. Grant School who passed away on May 2nd, 2021. Sarah Harrigan, a retired teacher at Golda Meir who passed away on May 2nd, 2021. Kimra Hill, a student at Marshall High School who passed away on May 4th, 2021. Terry Ward, a student at Marshall High School who passed away on May 9th, 2021. Ronell Williams, an education assistant at Fairview School who passed away on May 11th, 2021. Earl Pittman, a sheet metal worker at the MPS Metal Shop who passed away on May 21st, 2021. I would also like to mention that on May 25th marked the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd, a man who became a symbol in the fight for racial equality and police reform. Let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We'll now move on to the items of business on our agenda. In accordance with board rules, the board does not take public testimony on any items during regularly monthly meetings of the board. However, tonight, the board chair will entertain a motion to accept public testimony on items 2 and 3 from the reports and communications from the superintendent of schools. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak remain in the platform until you are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from the platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Also, for a listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Madam Secretary, what's the first item of business?
The first item on tonight's agenda is the awards and commendations, the Excellence in Education Awards.
Each month, the Board of Directors recognizes an outstanding school, student, staff, parent, or community member for a display of excellence, achievement, or innovation that may serve as an example to our schools and our entire community. This month, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors is proud to present the 2021 MPS valedictorians and salutatorians. Dr. Posley, please proceed with the presentation.
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. We begin this evening with a very special tradition, and that is sharing the names of our 2021 MPS valedictorians and salutatorians. We commend all these students and their families for their great academic achievement and wish them the best. At this time, I will ask Dr. Patricia Ellis to provide some opening comments before sharing some names of all of our MPS valedictorians and salutatorians, respectively, in the district. Dr. Ellis.
Good evening, President Peterson, members of the board, and Dr. Posley. My name is Patricia Ellis, Interim Director of Equity, Access, and Inclusion. I am honored to have this wonderful opportunity to introduce the Milwaukee Public Schools class of 2021 valedictorians and salutatorians. Graduates, this evening, you are being honored for being stellar scholars. You are shining examples of what it means to believe in yourself and to hold on to your dreams. We are so very proud of you for striving academically through the pandemic, obstacles, uncertainties, muted microphones, low bandwidth, and a few shed tears to achieve your goals. In the words of Oprah Winfrey, each of you beautifully reflects you are not your circumstances. You are your possibilities. If you know that, you can do anything. Therefore, we also celebrate you for your perseverance, resilience, diligence, commitment, and persistence in pursuing excellence. Although there were things you did not get to do or places you did not get to go as a part of your high school experience, this year taught you that you are not only smart, you are also strong, brave, and tenacious. Because in spite of everything that was happening in your lives, you continue to rise, thrive, and achieve. We applaud you for stepping up to contribute to your family by working extra hours or taking on additional chores and responsibilities. We admire you for actively engaging in equity and social justice activities, sometimes becoming a voice for those who may have felt unheard or unseen. We appreciate you for becoming engaged in service projects that help to ensure members of your community had food, water, clothing, and shelter. We hold you in high esteem for reaching out to comfort loved ones and peers, sincerely listening or giving compassionate advice. We are thrilled you express messages of positivity and hopefulness through Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and other acts of caring and sharing, even when you didn't know what tomorrow would bring your way. We are grateful you were not afraid to reach out to seek help for yourself or your friends when things felt or became overwhelming. We are inspired by how you handled planned and unplanned moments with grace, dignity, humor, patience, and a can-do attitude. For each of you, this has been a time of accelerated personal growth, deep reflection, and major accomplishments. Although the path to today has had many twists and turns, your virtual presence this evening demonstrates that even unpaved, unknown, and winding roads can lead to success. As I was thinking about your journey and how much you have achieved, I am reminded of these words from the song Hero by Mariah Carey. There's a hero. If you look inside your heart, you don't have to be afraid of what you are. There's an answer. If you reach into your soul, and the sorrow that you know will melt away. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth that a hero lies in you. Valedictorians and salutatorians, yes, a hero lies within each of you. This distinguished and honorable recognition shows how you tapped into your superpowers and used them as fuel to propel yourself forward while encouraging others along the way. As you continue on your journey, promise yourself that you will continue to grow intellectually, civically, creatively, and socially and emotionally to nourish and sustain your superpowers. Don't allow kryptonite to weaken your resolve or aspirations. Continue to see challenges as opportunities to become your personal best. For pressure can turn coal into a diamond, and the irritation caused by sand in an oyster can become a pearl. Forever cherish your unique and precious superpowers of taking initiative, engaging in complex and challenging social issues, respecting and valuing yourself, being leaders, reacting with discernment, engaging in acts of kindness and forgiveness, and courageously soaring above the storms of life. Parents, guardians, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers, principals, school staff, friends, neighbors, and others who have supported, nurtured, stood in the gap, had the courage to say, you can make better choices, and provided wise counsel to these young people. Thank you. As a loving and caring, diverse, intergenerational community, thank you for making the mythical village raising children a daily reality and welcoming place for these young people. And thank you for taking the time to inspire and encourage and motivate these young people. Valedictorians and salutatorians, continue to use life's challenges to reveal your brilliance. Continue to embrace the rich diversity of your ethnicity, culture, language, heritage, and so much more as assets within a global society. Continue to dream big dreams and engage in your community. Rise up and face each day with words of hope and belief in your head and heart. Most of all, continue to allow your intelligence, compassion, passion, and gratitude to light and guide your path and serve as a beacon for those who are on their own personal journey to success. Thank you for leaving your peers and generations to come with a powerful and beautiful legacy of how to face challenges and shine. Virtual hugs to each of you. At this time, we will transition to the introduction of our amazing, awesome, and magnificent valedictorians and salutatorians. I will present the Milwaukee Public Schools class of 2021 valedictorians first by stating their name, followed by the name of their school. Anicia L. Johnson, the Alliance School. Brandy Mays, Asada High School. Anya Ramos, Audubon Technology and Communication High School. Jemiah Chamberlain, Banner Prep High School. Abdi Fatah Abdi, Bayview High School. Jonelia D. Davis, Bradley Technology and Trade High School. Lay, Bradley Technology and Trade High School. Berlin Wells, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, Northwest Campus. Brennan Wells, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, Northwest Campus. Alexandra Marino Romero, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, South Campus. Daniel Ortega Moran, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, Southeast Campus. Crystal Torres, Grandview High School. Brandon C. Leach Jr., Grappe High School. Van Hin Tong, Alexander Hamilton High School. Israel Akinsanya, Rufus King International High School. Egan C. Bedwell, Rufus King International High School. Catherine G. Carroll, Rufus King International High School. Rebecca Gilpatrick, Rufus King International High School. Liana Goodman, Rufus King International High School. Courtney Griffin, Rufus King International High School. Kong Min-ji Her, Rufus King International High School. Madeline Isham, Rufus King International High School. Annabelle E. Jurina, Rufus King International High School. Bennett T. LaSalle, Rufus King International High School. Chloe L. Miller, Rufus King International High School. Skylar Morgan, Rufus King International High School. Ming Moa, Rufus King International High School. Butoyi Odetta, Rufus King International High School. Eli Pierce Haig, Rufus King International High School. Anya Plunkett, Rufus King International High School. Kyla N. Rax, Rufus King International High School. Cardoso M. Shedad, Rufus King International High School. Georgia L. Zimmerman, Rufus King International High School. Lucy E. Sloan Spice, Rufus King International High School. Liam Sullivan Conine, Rufus King International High School. Margaret Thompson, Rufus King International High School. Riley D. Young, Rufus King International High School. Brooklyn Jones, Ladd Lake Synergy. Raylene V. Rapani, McDowell Montessori High School. Trinae M. Austin, James Madison Academic Campus. Lisa R. Estes, Golda Meir High School. Gabrielle A. Gooding, Golda Meir High School. Jasmine Lutz, Golda Meir High School. Ava Tijerina, Golda Meir High School. Danae Ayers, Milwaukee High School of the Arts. Laylee I. Christensen, Milwaukee High School of the Arts. Shoshana G. Rubin, Milwaukee High School of the Arts. Eve E. Buddha, Milwaukee School of Languages. Samuel W. Gindy, Milwaukee School of Languages. Emma D. Sachs, Milwaukee School of Languages. Tyra Wilson, Milwaukee Marshall High School. Diamond M. Dickerson, North Division High School. Val P. Burnett, Nova High School. Nevaeh Jeans, Obama School of Career and Technical Education. Carrier Gray, Project Stay. Antonio M. Alcala, Pulaski High School. Ava E. Gessner, Reagan Preparatory High School. Lily Hassel, Reagan Preparatory High School. Samantha Hinshay, Reagan Preparatory High School. Grace Lilinski, Reagan Preparatory High School. Alondra Perez Rivera, Reagan Preparatory High School. Mylene Santibanez Tanyan, Reagan Preparatory High School. Raymond J. Scherer, Reagan Preparatory High School. Elizabeth J. Simon, Reagan Preparatory High School. Cynthia Soto Chavez, Reagan Preparatory High School. Veronica E. Wazek, Reagan Preparatory High School. Lydia Zychek, Reagan Preparatory High School. Jer Lore, Riverside University High School. Joshua Wilder, Riverside University High School. Say May, South Division High School. Aaliyah Ontiveros, Transition High School. Carmen N. Bledsoe, Vincent High School. Annalise Moy, Washington High School of Information Technology, and Calandre Hassel, Wisconsin Conservatory of Lifelong Learning. Please unmute your mics and let's give our valedictorians a thunderous round of applause. Now, we will transition to recognizing the Milwaukee Public Schools Class of 2021 salutatorians. Shania C. Threet, The Alliance School. Taisha Kraft, Asada High School. Brady Barossa, Audubon Technology and Communication High School. Christopher L. Duwangmala, Audubon Technology and Communication High School. Jayla Horton, Banner Prep High School. Israel Urena, Bayview High School. Dwight Turner, Bradley Technology and Trade High School. Zaria Sims, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, Northwest Campus. Arlette Nicholas, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, South Campus. Cerisa Di Santos Mora, Carmen High School of Science and Technology, Southeast Campus. Ana Ramirez, Grandview High School. Norma G. Hernandez, Groppe High School. Shanley Lance, Alexander Hamilton High School. Desiree Thompson, Ladd Lake Synergy. Lanesha Smith, McDowell Montessori High School. Sha Zhang, James Madison Academic Campus. Michaela Bowers, Milwaukee High School of the Arts. Casimir Burns, Milwaukee High School of the Arts. Catherine E. Fink, Milwaukee School of Languages. Kavina M. Spinks, Milwaukee Marshall High School. Shekinah Boatman, North Division High School. Nashea Williams Lewis, Nova High School. Linciana Ferguson, Obama School of Career and Technical Education. Julia Butler, Project stayed. Christian A. Kaziski, Pulaski High School. Ashley Lopez, South Division High School. Rodolfo Carmen, Transition High School. Zachoria J. Randall, Vincent High School. Cheviana T. Jones, Washington High School of Information Technology, and Michaela Davis, Wisconsin Conservatory of Lifelong Learning. Again, please unmute your mics and let's give our salutatorians a thunderous round of applause. Valedictorians and salutatorians, congratulations on your superb achievement. Continue to soar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. And congratulations once again to all of our valedictorians and salutatorians. We are expecting great things out of each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. While we have made progress returning to normal, the current realities of the COVID-19 pandemic still limit our ability to fully commemorate the accomplishments of our graduates. Much of our traditional end-of-school fanfare has had to be canceled or reimagined. The fact that we were unable to bring together our valedictorians and salutatorians on the Central Services stage for a formal recognition is one of the many such traditions that we had to forgo this year. While having one's name read off a list is not the same as being able to gather on the stage with other valedictorians and salutatorians, I hope that all the students whose name were announced tonight know that the board is proud of their work and the example they have set for their fellow students. To any of these accomplished young people who may be listening tonight, on behalf of the Milwaukee Public Schools family, congratulations, and we wish you the greatest success in your future endeavors. Let's have one last round of applause for these fine students.
Woo!
Okay, Madam Secretary, what is the next item of business?
The next item of business on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors meetings, and those minutes will be provided to the board for approval at next month's meeting.
Okay, Madam Secretary, what's the next item of business?
The next item on the agenda is action on a request from the City Comptroller for adoption of a resolution authorizing the sale of revenue anticipation notes, the RANS notes. The recommendation is that the board approve the resolution as attached.
Does the Office of Board Governors wish to make comments?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this is an annual occurrence of this item coming before the board. This item actually helps the district to request funding, and it provides gap funding between receiving the per pupil allocation from the state until the district receives that funding. So authorizing the sale of the RANS notes actually is an annual event, allowing the district to continue to operate.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this item? We need a motion to approve it.
I move to approve.
Thank you. It's been moved. Do we need a second, Madam Secretary?
Yes, we would.
Is there a second?
We have Director O'Halloran's hand that went up.
Okay, thank you very much. Please call the roll.
On Director Taylor's motion to approve the request for the RANS notes and approval of the resolution, seconded by Director O'Halloran. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary.
However, before we go on to the next item, we did have, representation from the city attorney's office that joins us every year to, if the board had any questions about specifics around the RAND's notes outside of what was already provided.
We'll take a moment. Did anybody have a request for more information?
Here's
Yep.
Mr.
And we-
Chason.
Yes, I was going to say, and we do have Mr. Chason, but I wanted to give the city attorney an opportunity if the board members had questions. Seeing none, Mr. Chason?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Over the last several years, the district has made draws on a line of credit by the city of Milwaukee prior to the issuance of these RANDs. And I was wondering if Mr. Lee could just confirm, for the purposes of this resolution, those lines of credit, the draws on them, and the total of the RANDs. At no point together, the sum total will exceed the total authorized amount under this resolution, simply because of the draws on the lines of credit are not mentioned explicitly in the resolution. Is that the correct interpretation, Mr. Lee?
Yes, typically MPS would need cash flow of $50 million to $100 million prior to issuance of the revenue anticipation notes in October. You have a lot of expenditures August through October prior to the sale that without much revenues coming in at all. Was there another part to your question? Okay.
And Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is the typical amount for operations.
I'm sorry, I didn't identify myself. President Peterson and members of the board, I'm Richard Lee, Public Debt Specialist with the City of Milwaukee.
Thank you. Are there any other questions by the board members? Seeing none, we will go to Madam Secretary. Are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Yes, Mr. President. We have 3 communications from the superintendent, and the first communication is the monthly report with possible action from the superintendent of schools. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the superintendent please present the report?
Yes, President Peterson, members of the board, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. We have academic superstars throughout our district, and this evening was all about celebrating some of them, our valedictorians and salutatorians. I would like to extend and acknowledge to all of our MPS graduates and their families and wish them the best. My report also includes information on the success of our students throughout the district, from the 2021 STEM Fair participations and awards, the celebrations of Earth Day, to the Boys and Girls Club of Wisconsin Youth of the Year, and the 2021 United States Youth Senate Program. We celebrate all of these awardees for their academic excellence, scholarship, service, and leadership. Congratulations to all of these students and all of the MPS students who have accomplished great things during the 2020-21 school year. April and May was full of opportunities to show gratitude to many individuals who support our students and our schools, as well as we participated in Teacher Appreciation Week, School Nurses Day, School Lunch Hero Day, and thanking our volunteers during a National Volunteer Week. You make all of us MPS proud. Now that young people are eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine, MPS has hosted walk-in sites in 5 of our schools. In collaboration with the Milwaukee Health Department, youth ages 12 years old and older have access to the Pfizer vaccine right at designated MPS locations. The sites are Morris, North, South, Rogers, and Roosevelt. Please encourage individuals to take advantage of this opportunity. Please see my full report for additional details. Thank you, and this concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Does the board wish to make any comments? Director Halloran.
Thank you. For the vaccination program, I wanted to thank you again for that. Do we have an estimated, like, how long it'll be running? Is there an end date on that, or plans to expand it over the summer?
Superintendent.
President Peterson, members of the board, right now we do not have an end date in sight, and we are encouraging and working with the Milwaukee Health Department to stay there as long as we possibly can. We are also providing vaccinations for family members if they come in with their students as well.
Any other comment? Yes, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Just a question, Superintendent, if somebody wanted to find out those hours, where would they look where would they look?
Chair, President Peterson, members of the board, it's 9 to 11. It's on our website, on all of our social media sites. We have it out there and posted.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, what is the next communication?
The next communication is action to discharge the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies from consideration of the revisions to Administrative Policy 7.37, graduation requirements, in order to give public hearing and to take immediate action on this item. The recommendation is that the board, 1, discharge the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policy from further consideration of this item. And 2, approve the proposed revisions to Administrative Policy 3.37, graduation requirements, as outlined in the attachments to this item.
Okay. I will now entertain a motion to waive Rule 109 in order to take public testimony on this item and then obviously hear from the administration. Could somebody make such a motion? Director Herndon.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Director Simpson's hand was up.
Okay.
Second.
Madam Secretary, are there any people waiting to be heard on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have 2 individuals registered to speak on this item. Would you like to move forward to?
Actually, could the administration just give a little background on this item first so that the members of the board are fully informed about why this is coming up the way it is?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Prior to the administration giving background, what is before you is the request to waive board rule in order to hear public testimony on this item.
Okay. In that case, so that would be us taking a vote now? You mean before we have any discussion?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Please call the roll.
On Director Herndon's motion, seconded by Director Simpson, to waive board rule 1.09 in order to give public hearing on this item and to take immediate action. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
So at this point, would it be appropriate to have the administration give some background?
Mr. Chair, yes, this would be the appropriate time.
Okay. Administration, please explain why we're having this brought to us at this time.
President Peterson and members of the board, we are asking for your approval of the proposed changes to Administrative Policy 7.39, graduation requirements. These changes will allow us to support our students relative to financial literacy. Before turning it over to Dr. Hill, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the many individuals and partners who have continued to support our students relative to financial literacy. At this time, I will ask Dr. Hill to provide an overview, and after which we'll be happy to answer any other questions that you may have. Dr. Hill.
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. John Hill, Director of College and Career Readiness. Tonight, we are proposing a minor revision to Administrative Policy 7.37, graduation requirements, in order to carry out the requirement associated with the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions and the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction Financial Literacy Innovation Grant, which was awarded to Milwaukee Public Schools this past fall. This grant requires all high school students to take a 1-semester personal finance course to prepare them to be college and career ready, and that the local school board approved this graduation requirement in the first year of the grant. The good news is this grant does allow for us to phase in this new requirement over time. The graduation requirement is simply a 1 semester or half credit personal finance course, which will count towards the existing college and career readiness requirement. This revision does not increase the total number of credits required needed to graduate. That remains the same at 22 credits. Typically, when we introduce a graduation requirement, we provide the first class of students 4 years to meet the new requirement. In this case, we have added an additional year because of the pandemic to allow students and schools to focus on regaining any learning that may have been lost prior to worrying about a new graduation requirement. This new graduation requirement will begin at 3 schools, Riverside, Hamilton, and Green Tree Preparatory Academy, starting with the class of 2026, our current 7th graders, and then additional schools will be added yearly as we build capacity at schools to offer the course. I have with me tonight Mr. Eric Radomski, Manager of Career and Technical Education, and Ms. Marty Diaz, our new financial literacy teacher mentor. I will ask Mr. Radomski to share a couple of points on the importance of financial literacy.
President Peterson, members of the board, Eric Radomski, Manager of Career and Technical Education. Dr. Hill referenced the grant we were awarded from the DPI and funded by the Department of Financial Institutions. We were also awarded another grant from Next Gen Personal Finance, which enabled us to hire Ms. Diaz, who Dr. Hill just mentioned. That grant will fund Ms. Diaz for 3 years. She is currently leading a team of teachers from the 3 schools through financial literacy professional development, and they are in the process of developing the course that will be offered this fall. The main source of that curriculum for the course is from Next Gen Personal Finance. Ms. Diaz and the team of teachers will continue to meet throughout the 21-22 school year to share progress, to take part in additional professional development, and to review and refine the curriculum. In addition to this team of teachers, Ms. Diaz has assembled an advisory board made up of district financial literacy partners, including Secure Futures, Educators Credit Union, EverFi, and others. The group has met once and will continue to meet bi-monthly throughout the year to act as a community advocate for the importance of financial literacy in MPS and to identify ways to provide supplemental support for the students and teachers. The goal of this initiative is to continue adding more high schools that offer the financial literacy course until we've reached all students at all high schools. In terms of the importance of providing financial literacy to our high school students, I'd like to share just a few research findings with you. Number one, we know that Black and Hispanic students in the United States score below the national average on an international student assessment in financial literacy. Additionally, students in public schools with the highest levels of poverty scored on average much lower than the overall average, whereas students with the lowest levels of poverty scored much higher than the average. Research tells us that youth are increasingly facing higher levels of debt. In fact, the average student loan balance in Wisconsin in 2019 was over $30,000. The pandemic has caused debts to move even higher, and the average student loan balance is now more than $33,000. We know that a poor background in money management follows teens into adulthood. Lacking a clear understanding about basic financial concepts undermines efforts to establish themselves as well-functioning adults. Providing students with a solid background in personal finance can help us to produce financially savvy young adults who we know from research are more likely to plan, more likely to save, and more likely to invest. They are also less likely to have unwieldy credit card debt and far less likely to use high-cost borrowing methods like payday loans. I thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Let's go first to the speakers on the platform, and then we'll go to board members. Madam Secretary.
First speaker registered to speak on this item is Angela Harris. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is not the agenda item I wanted to speak on. You all, that It was really confusing today registering to speak. So I want to speak to the budget under the SPB meeting.
Ms. Harris, the board has not publicly noticed any items on the agenda other than the two under the superintendent's report for public testimony. Those are the only two items available for public testimony tonight.
Okay, I thought that there was still going to be public testimony on the budget tonight, but okay, I'll email it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Brenda Campbell. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Hello.
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. My name is Brenda Campbell. Campbell spelled C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L.
Thank you.
I serve as President and CEO of Secure Futures, an organization focused on teen financial empowerment. We have proudly partnered with MPS since 2006. I'm here this evening to voice support for a personal finance course graduation requirement. In 2017, the Wisconsin legislature passed a mandate requiring school districts to adopt standards for financial literacy. Prior to that, thousands of students across the state would graduate every single year with no clue how to manage money. Since the mandate, more and more Wisconsin districts have shifted to require personal finance. I urge you to do the same, and here's why. There's increasing evidence that students who complete personal finance make better financial choices across multiple and critical adult money decisions. They are more likely to avoid credit card debt and predatory lenders, and they have a better understanding of how to pay for college, including how financial aid and student loans work. This requirement is particularly important for children in low to moderate income families. Across the country, in schools where 75% of students are eligible for free or reduced cost lunch, only 3.9% are required to take a personal finance course. Most urban cores in the United States are financial education deserts. While 1 in 5 students nationwide graduates having taken a personal finance course, for districts with majority Black and brown students, that drops to 1 in 25. This is a social justice issue. In fact, with your approval this evening, you will make MPS the second urban district in the nation to require a personal finance course. You will be leading the nation, and here's a bonus. I have delivered financial education in high schools across this district, and I can tell you from experience, MPS students are eager to learn about money. Most students are actively engaged, and many express gratitude for the opportunity. They clearly realize how critical this is for their future success. Please show them that you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, Secretary, do we have any other speakers on the platform? Excuse me.
Mr. Chair, that completes public testimony on this item. We did receive, let's see. We did not receive any written testimony on this item.
Okay, I saw Director Herndon's hand up. Director Herndon.
Good afternoon, administration and fellow directors. I want to commend administration for putting this forth. I think, and I have been asking for this for years, but to my amazement, I met with a group of students a couple of weeks ago, and they brought this very thing up as well. It's desperately needed, and it's been gone.
Director Herndon?
Yes. Did it pop off? Good afternoon, administration.
Let's just wait for a moment.
Are we having technical problems?
It appeared to be a duplication of speech, but you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Director.
Okay. I was just going to say that the gentleman mentioned payday loans, and our community gets severely ripped off by these, I don't know what to call them, types of businesses, and it is an excellent move. I do have a question, and that is how many schools will be added to the program annually going forward after the initial rollout?
Administration.
President Peterson, Director Herndon, members of the board. We have strong interest right now from a number of schools who would like to add it. We don't have an exact number right now. We're going to see what their capacity is to offer it. One of the things we do have from the DPI is money for telepresence in the event that we can't get teachers at schools to offer it in their schools right away. But we anticipate being able to expand fairly easily, because we do think that we can get teachers licensed appropriately through an alternative method if they don't already have the appropriately licensed teacher there.
Thank you. Follow-up, Director Herndon?
No, other than to say that the gentleman mentions virtually, and our experience with COVID schooling this past year, many of the parents and students said that that was something that they did not necessarily like.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. And I'll just mention the student group that you were talking about is LIT. I was also at that meeting, and I was impressed with their enthusiasm on this issue. Other board members who wish to speak? Yes, Director O'Halloran, and then Director Taylor, and then Director Gokul Gandhi.
Thank you, President Peterson. So I have a few questions. One, is it possible, is there a reason why it's being brought tonight, or is it possible to wait until possibly Tuesday even to take a vote on this? Because I think some of the administrators with whom I have relationships, were kind of caught off guard that this was coming tonight. Normally for a full board meeting, we don't take testimony on things. It had been referred to committee. So I'm just questioning the process and if there's a reason why it has to be voted on tonight.
Administration or board governance?
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee. The reason this is coming forward tonight is this particular item is time-bound in terms of the grant for us to receive those funds and not have to relinquish them. So we do need to get this done in a timely fashion. I'm not sure if there was confusion around the item that's following this one.
No, the confusion was around this one in particular because some of the schools don't have teachers. So understanding that it's starting with 3 schools, and I think the principals with whom I spoke were more concerned about it being applicable to all students, and understanding that some of our schools don't have teachers for this, and concerns around the telepresence. So it absolutely needs to be voted on tonight. It can't wait until June 1st when we have another special board meeting. That's what I'm hearing. And so is there going to be budget provided for this going forward? Or is the understanding then if a teacher is not available, will it always be a telepresence? Because I know that's how we have gotten some of the language requirements addressed, but I would strongly urge that if we're going to be requiring students to take this, that we provide funding for a teacher to teach this in person.
Administration? What about the funding for schools?
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, members of the board, the funding from Next Gen Personal Finance is good for 3 years and a little bit more than 3 years to fund Ms. Diaz's position and professional development for any teachers that would come on. So if a school couldn't identify a teacher or didn't have a teacher that they could spare to teach the course, it would need to be some sort of virtual format like telepresence. But I do think that with the alternative methods of licensing, that it should not be an issue. If there's a teacher there that a school can identify, we can get them the appropriate license and the appropriate professional development with the course to be able to teach it.
Thank you. Director Taylor.
Thank you, President Peterson. I believe Director Harden asked my question. The other thing is, because we're talking about this tonight, and to make sure we're clear, we stated 3 schools. Can we give names for those schools for our listening audience so that they are aware of the schools that will have this happening in them soon?
Sure. Could you repeat the names, please, administration?
President Peterson, Director Taylor, members of the board, the 3 schools where this will go into effect in 2026 are Riverside, Hamilton, and Green Tree Preparatory Academy. So for those 7th graders, now 7th graders, that enroll in those 3 schools, they will need to take this class by the year 2026.
Any follow-up, Dr. Taylor?
Yes, just a comment. And I do know this will be something that is very sustainable. I'm hoping for our students. And let's make sure that while tonight it seemed a little confusing on why we need to move forward, that we assure that this is something that becomes successful. Because coming from a community where I wasn't taught like going to school about financial literacy, I do believe this can be a benefit for our students that are coming forward and for their life after high school within MPS. Thank you, President Peters.
Thank you. Director Gokul Gandhi.
President Peterson, administration, can you talk a little bit about how the partnership with Next Gen Personal Finance came to fruition?
Administration.
Marty, would you like to answer this, or would you like me to?
Would you be able to, Eric?
So the partnership with President Peterson and Director, which director was it? Gokul Gandhi, members of the board. The partnership with Next Gen Personal Finance started actually through an introduction from Secure Futures. From Brenda Campbell, we've been working with Secure Futures since 2006, when I was a teacher 15 years ago, and has continued on strong since then. We applied to the Department of Public Instruction for the first grant, and then had subsequent conversations with Next Gen Personal Finance about having somebody lead this effort. And so that is the two were sort of combined. That DPI grant that we had, it was a condition that we would get that DPI grant in order for Next Gen Personal Finance to fund Marty's position and the professional development.
Director Peterson, can I?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want us to be really mindful and exploring who we partner with, because there is a new organization called Gold Setter, and it's the first Black-owned kids and family finance app. And so, as we're thinking even about who we partner with and companies and partnerships that look like our kids and look like our families, I think that's a really important part of this conversation. And so, I'd like to understand what the demographic of staff is of Next Gen Finance Partnership, kind of what their locale is, and how that relates to our kids, because these partnerships often, have longevity. And so I know that we get introductions, but I just want to make sure we're doing due diligence on even the partners that we have and what the leadership of those organizations look like.
Administration, would you care to comment?
President Peterson, Director Gokul Gandhi, thank you. We would be happy to connect with the organization that you mentioned. We do have this advisory board, and we just had our first meeting, and we're looking for additional partners to come and support us and support our efforts to do this work. So we'd be happy to connect with them. In terms of Next Gen Personal Finance, we can get you that information. I can tell you that our main contact is, her name is Tori. She is a Black female, and the main purpose of the grant from Next Gen Personal Finance was to serve minority students. And so Just want you to know that that was the goal of the grant.
Thank you.
Okay, Director, so go to Matt Chasen first and then back to Director Herndon.
Thank you, President Peterson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. In order to ensure that we can monitor this policy effectively going forward, is there a date by which we anticipate this total phase-in to be complete? In the absence of that information, it'll be hard to monitor the implementation of this policy change. Does the administration have that date in mind?
Administration.
Director Peterson, Mr. Chasen, and members of the board, our first benchmark date is clearly May of 2026, because that will be the first graduating class. The benefit of having a phased-in approach allows us some flexibility in terms of the numbers of schools we bring in each year. So depending on how the landscape looks, we will know as we bring schools in, they will have 4 years to meet that mark. So because we always give students 4 years to meet a new graduation requirement. So if the following year we bring in 3 more schools, we will know that by 2030 we would have 6 schools. Now we can accelerate that timeline if there's the desire of the board. We certainly want to work with the school communities to make sure, as we've mentioned previously, they have the capacity, because we never want to put a requirement out there that our students don't have ample opportunity to meet.
Follow up, Mr. Chasen.
I guess I'm not hearing a definitive timeline by which this is intended to be complete, and the dates you're tossing out there are 9 years into the future already. So I just bring that to the attention of the board, that that's a tough one to make sure the implementation is moving at the speed the board intends it to. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chasen was going exactly where I was going. A couple of things. One was the timeline, because I don't see where it makes any sense to wait that many years, 4 or 5 years, in order to evaluate and measure the success or failure of this program. It would seem more feasible to me that we would review. I would expect some children to take the course right away. We should be able to measure the effectiveness of that course right away at the end of the first year. So I certainly agree that we need some timelines. And the other thing, I got mixed up in trying to figure out the connection between 2 or 3 different companies and how that all worked, because we have Next Gen Personal Finance and Secure Futures. What is this a collaborative venture that could disappear or break up at some point? I'm confused with that, and I'd like more information as to who is the company that's actually getting the grant, or is it both companies actually getting the grant? I'd like more information on that. And again, timelines and measures of success or failure are critical.
Administration.
Chair Peterson, President Peterson, members of the board, one of the things that we're trying to do here is that we can go as fast as the board wants us to go on this. But what we want to do is measure our expectations. We're starting out with 3 because we have a grant with the funding to be able to get us started there, and we bring in schools on as we go forward. It's also difficult to just give a school number, because if we started out last year at 159 schools, now we're at 158. So therefore, schools will drop off that way as well. So, but what we can do is to go as fast as there's a need, as well as that, like we just said, we don't want to put a requirement on a student that we don't have the staff to do so. And with the idea around educator shortage, we can't, as far as with teachers, we have to work to make sure we have licensed staff to be able to teach that particular class. So that we don't have to do as much as telepresence. So that's our goal around that particular piece. But we want all of our young people to have this opportunity for this piece, and the agencies that have come together this is a group trying to make sure that we have more and more. That's the reason we're trying to bring more individuals to the table. Educators Credit Union is a part of it, and we want to bring more financial institutions forward that can also help us fray the cost of staff, materials, and things that our young people need. Team? Anything else?
Sure. President Peterson, Director Herndon, a couple other questions I heard there about that maybe some confusion around the grant. The grant is fully to MPS, so it's all to us. I suppose it's possible that a partnership could break up, but I don't see that happening. I mean, the partners we have at the table are all very long-term partners, long-time supporters of MPS, and very excited to be part of this work to support financial literacy. They've all been great partners. The one thing that's been lacking is that we haven't had this standalone course. And so students have gotten some financial literacy, but they haven't gotten it in large enough doses to make as big an impact as we'd like to make.
Just Director Herndon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think Dr. Posley understood when I spoke of measures. What I meant by that was not the number of schools that would be ruled out annually. What I meant was measure the learning that was accomplished during that semester. That's what I meant. In other words, that students learned how to calculate percentages, learn about loans, balance and checkbooks, all of the personal finance, how to buy a home, that type of stuff. That's what I meant. I assume that's what personal finance would be teaching them, and that's what I'd like to see as to how successful it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Administration, any comment on that?
Yes, Chair, President Peterson, members of the board, pardon me for the misunderstanding of where the question that was asked. I guess I was answering Mr. Chasen's question, who was asking that same question as well. But one of the things we do have is a scope and sequence of all the courses that will be taught through the year, and I will yield to Mr. Radomski to kind of walk through that particular piece, and we will be more than happy to provide the board with the scope and sequence as well. Go ahead.
President Peterson, Director Herndon, members of the board, I do have the course draft right here, so Ms. Diaz and the teachers will continue to work on that throughout the summer to finalize it. But I have, I could kind of go through some of the topics. I think Director Herndon, what you said is certainly correct, the way you're thinking about this course. Behavioral finance, consumer unit, budgeting, checking, savings, paying for college, types of credit, managing credit, investing, insurance, taxes. That's the last one that's on here now. And we actually have a scope with how our current partners that we have will be brought in to support. So, whether it's EverFi or Money Moves Venture from EverFi, Secure Futures, those groups and any groups we continue to build, we'll look to see where we can best place them within the curriculum. And we certainly will monitor the progress of how this course is going to be implemented. So we will assess the students before and after to see what their learning has been.
Thank you. Director Garcia, and then Director Simpson.
Yes, my remarks were just thinking, administration of thinking about ways that, to address an issue that is very prevalent specifically in Black and Brown communities when it comes to just predatory lending, just being a little bit more financial literacy. And, based on the conversations we've had with youth, we see that that's coming from them as a desire to really gather more knowledge about. And, we did hear a statement from Brenda Campbell. I've had the pleasure of working with Brenda in the past, and just what, they're able to do with, the organization, I think will really set this up. And I do agree, with the comments of, specifically Director Gokul Gandhi, in regards to just making sure that as we continue to grow these partnerships, that we're doing it in a way that's, organizations that are very much connected to our communities. I think this is going to be a phenomenal way for us. They mentioned that we would be the second urban district to adopt these type of requirements for our students. And I think that's really, looking at the way of paving a way for things that have not yet been done. And, I just really commend everyone on this. And, just the fact that, all of this is also tied to, the financial literacy that we have at the state level. So I'm just excited to see this specific thing elevated into that, especially with the leadership. And I know that we have Ms. Marty Diaz here. I don't know if we would be able to hear from her, considering that we do have access to her. I would be interested in seeing if there's anything from her perspective, considering that she is the person who's, hired to work with, the 3 schools that have been designated to, roll this initiative out.
Thank you. Administration, could we ask Marty Diaz to make some comments?
Hi, good evening,
Thank you.
President Peterson, members of the board. I'm Marty Diaz, financial literacy teacher mentor. I've had the opportunity to work with the teachers that will be teaching the personal finance course next year in collaboration with our advisory board, our financial literacy advisory board. And we're working on developing the curriculum. So to answer some of the questions regarding the curriculum, we do have a diagnostic. So as students start off the year, they'll be taking a test at the beginning. And then we also have benchmark assessments that will be given. So we will have the opportunity to measure how much students are, how much knowledge they're gaining throughout the course. And then there was another thing that I wanted to mention regarding the different components of the programs that are working with us on the advisory committee. We're partnering up with, a professor from UWM, as well as several different local organizations to just give us some feedback on the work that they've already been doing with financial literacy. So we're excited to have a team of advisors to really help us and support us through our work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Diaz. Director Simpson.
Thank you, President Peterson. I was just wondering if it would be possible for us to get, an update at the committee level on the progress on this work, both in terms of, partnerships we're looking at, the idea of, what's our capacity to staff these courses, and when you talked about the course having a draft, maybe some updates on that and a timeline just down the road. Is there an opportunity, and I don't know, maybe Madam Secretary would be able to help with that, a date when this can come back to a committee for a little bit deeper dive and looking at that and getting some updates?
Chair, Secretary?
Mr. President, members of the board, if I'm hearing the conversation correctly, what Director Simpson is asking for is an update after implementation. So maybe a report being provided back to the board after the first assessment of students in the course. Or were you looking at receiving information around the development and implementation?
Dr. Simpson.
Development and implementation, it seems like, and I mean, that's just what I'm hearing. It sounds like the board is asking for, just in terms of partnerships, timeline, things like that. So, and in administration, no rush, but just, that it comes back to the board for a little more discussion. Mr. President?
Yes.
Members of the board, hearing Director Simpson's clarity, it sounds as if a quarterly report would be something that the board could receive in the same manner that this information has been shared on the topic of nutrition. So in thinking about changes and developments relative to coursework, if the administration would be amenable, the quarterly report could provide the board with information on what is happening almost every 90 days. So
sounds like
that as a suggestion.
Sounds good to me. And unless there's objection, we'll ask the administration to do that. Seeing no objection, we'll move forward. Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand. So the background item, it says this grant will require all high school students to take a 1-semester personal finance course. And then in the actual document, it says that beginning with the class of 2026 at select high schools. So this requirement, are we saying this will apply to all students, or are we saying we're only requiring it of students at the select high schools where the course is available? So my question is more around implementation, I guess.
Administration.
Director Peterson, or President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, members of the board, this will apply only to the schools, the select schools. So to repeat those three names: Riverside, Hamilton, and Green Tree Preparatory Academy. As we bring more schools on, they will be fully aware, all students, staff, families will be fully aware that that requirement is being added to their school. It will not be a surprise.
Thank you. Director Halloran, does that any follow-up?
So I guess going forward, it would just be nice to know then if schools were interested in having this come to their school, how they would express that level of interest, and just more clarity around how schools are selected to make sure we're making the opportunities available equitably. So not needed tonight, though.
Okay. Director Garcia, did you have another comment?
Yeah, mine was a follow-up to my question, or I guess just to the overall conversation, but in the items about what I guess for me, what I would like to see, just to get a little bit more clarity around it, I would also like the list of the advisory board that's there. Who are those folks? And just a list of like the partnerships, whether that's, established, whether that's emerging, just so that I think it's just useful information for us to have as this continues into deeper conversations at whatever committee it lands on.
Okay. Administration, I assume that you heard those suggestions, I hope. So, go ahead.
President Peterson, members of the board, we'll be happy to get that information to each of you.
Okay. Is that okay, Director Garcia? Yeah. Director Gopal-Dande.
Yeah, and just to add to Director Garcia's comments, I would love that if we start to include demographic information on who leads those companies, what the staff of those companies look like, racial, ethnic, gender demographics as well, please.
Thank you. Okay, I think what we're in need of now is a motion to approve this. We need a motion in a second. Would somebody like to make such a motion? Director O'Halloran, and do I have a...
Oh, yeah.
And a second, Director Gopal-Dande. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We did not hear Director O'Halloran's motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director O'Halloran. Director O'Halloran.
I was going to say I move that we adopt administration's recommendation.
And I second that motion.
Thank you very much. Excuse me for pushing us ahead too quickly. Any other conversation on this matter? Secretary, could you please, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion, seconded by Director Gopal-Dande, moving approval of the proposed revisions to Administrative Policy 7.37 as outlined in the attachments to this item, with quarterly updates on the development and implementation of the financial literacy programming being offered to students. Is it?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, great. On the motion as read into the record, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Taylor?
Aye.
And Chair Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next communication?
The next communication is action on a request for authorization to seek waivers from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for district graduation requirements and the civics test requirements for the 2020-21 school year. The recommendation is that the board approve authorization to 1, seek a waiver from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for district graduation requirements for the 2021 school year, and 2, replace district graduation requirements with modified requirements meeting the criteria for credits as outlined in the Wisconsin statutes 118.33, and 3, seek a waiver from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for the civics test requirement for the 2021 school year.
Okay, I'll now entertain a motion to waive Board Rule 109 in order to take public testimony on this item. Would somebody like to make that motion?
You have Director O'Halloran and Taylor.
Okay.
So move.
Madam Secretary, could you do the roll call?
I have Director O'Halloran moving to waive Board Rule 1.09 in order to give public testimony on this item, and Director Taylor seconds
Correct.
that motion. On the motion as read into the record, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Aye.
Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
And President Peterson. I'm sorry, Director Taylor?
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Would the superintendent please present the item?
President Peterson and members of the board, as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, we are requesting approval to seek waiver from DPI for district graduation requirements, as well as the civic test requirements for the 2021 school year. And we are happy to respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
Does the board wish to make any comments? Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no public testimony on this item.
Okay, Director O'Halloran.
I move we adopt administration's, or we approve administration's recommendation.
Second.
It's been made, motion made by Director O'Halloran and Director Herndon seconded it. Madam Secretary.
On Director O'Halloran's motion, seconded by Director Herndon, to approve the administration's recommendation for authorization to seek waivers from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction relative to graduation requirements and the civics test requirement. Director Carr.
Madam Secretary, she's away from her desk for a quick
Okay.
moment.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Board Governance?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have our regular monthly report on legislative activities affecting MPS. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Madam Secretary, please present the report.
This month, Mr. Chris Thiel, as with other months, will be presenting the legislative update to the board on matters affecting MPS.
Great. Tell us all the good news, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. Thank you, President Peterson, members of the board, Chris Thiel, Government Relations. The bulk of the information this evening is about what happened today in Madison at the state capitol.
Chris, there you go.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, the update primarily is about what took place today at the state capitol. As we know and have been discussing, we are well into the state budget process, and we are at the point where the Joint Committee on Finance has heard public testimony, and now they're back in the Joint Finance meeting room at the executive committee level. And so they are actually voting on portions of the budget. And today they were voting on the K-12 education portion of the budget. I'm going to try to walk through what happened. There are a couple different elements. There are two things that are separate. They were joined together during discussions today in a way that was a little bit confusing. And then there was actually something said in a press release about funding that was going to go to K-12 schools that is not actually going to go to K-12 schools. So I will try to explain what exactly occurred. So at the federal level and at the outset here, I think it's important again to thank Senator Baldwin, Congresswoman Moore, our Representative Evan Goyke, and Senator LaTanya Johnson serve on the Joint Committee on Finance. But at the federal level, obviously, we've been working to make sure during this unprecedented pandemic that we have support for schools, given all the extra costs associated with keeping everyone safe, educating our students, and knowing that going forward, we will need additional support. So there have been three main funding moments that have come through: the CARES Act, which was roughly a year ago, and then what's being called ESSER 2, or a motion that went forward at the tail end of last year, at the end of December. And we are now in a moment where the American Rescue Plan funds are proceeding kind of through the regular path. There's a moment when they have to get approval at the state level to then flow down to the school district level. So as part of this process, when the federal government declares we are going to provide this level of assistance, they ask for cooperation at the state level. And the Joint Committee on Finance and the two previous moments when the federal funds came through agreed to maintenance of effort stipulations. In essence, that they would not somehow co-opt these federal dollars and, through accounting tricks, use them for tax cut purposes or to fund something other than education. And during those first two moments where the Joint Committee on Finance agreed to receive those first two sets of funds, they agreed to those maintenance of effort provisions. One maintenance of effort provision was in the event that states were really in fiscal difficulty because of the pandemic, that you couldn't simply go too far back and cut education funding. And fortunately, as it turns out, the state right now, as the Joint Committee on Finance is meeting, has a balance of roughly $2 billion with a B, $2 billion of revenue, which is wonderful, to fund education and other programs under state government. We also anticipate that at the beginning of June, there will be additional revenues that are produced in the updated estimate after we've had tax collections that were turned in on May 17th. So there are funds at the state level. We anticipate even more funding coming through. And so the opportunity is there to do the right thing in terms of funding K-12 education and other needs across the state. But there was another maintenance of effort provision, which is a little more technical, which essentially says you also, as a state, need to continue to fund education at relatively the same percentage in your budget as you have been. Meaning, again, even if we are in a situation as we are, where funds are available, we continue to provide a level of support proportionally in the state budget, so we don't just shift all the money into transportation or some other fund where education dollars are not supposed to go. And so again, the Joint Committee on Finance has previously agreed to those provisions. So what occurred today is something that could have occurred any other day. It did not have to be associated with the state budget moment. And that is the Joint Committee on Finance giving approval to the plan to disperse these federal dollars. The vast majority of these dollars have come to school districts using the Title I formula. 90% of the dollars being allocated use the Title I formula, because when Congress moved forward, they recognized the impact on students in poverty, school districts, assisting families and students that happen to be in that circumstance. And so the vast majority of dollars came out that way. But the state does have discretion over a smaller portion, not even 10% of those funds, but a portion of that balance of 10%. And so the Joint Committee on Finance chose today to deal with this federal responsibility, number one, and then number two, to proceed with its regular state responsibility of budgeting the state dollars. So these two things came together, and if it takes an explanation such as this to kind of walk through where we were. So there was a decision made about the disbursement of the federal dollars. Those will be moving forward. You may hear reporting about provisions about the federal dollars that of that smaller portion that they have discretion over, they will be giving a per pupil amount to districts that had been in person more than 50% of the time. So they are, this ongoing argument about kids being educated, whether in person, hybrid, virtual, that rhetorical battle that we've been hearing about kind of played out again today. But nonetheless, those federal dollars will be dispersed and they should be coming to school districts. However, and here's where some of the confusion begins. As you may have seen in reporting out yesterday and more reporting out today, instead of acknowledging that the pandemic has vastly increased costs and that some of these costs will be ongoing, the kind of rhetorical argument that we heard today from Joint Finance is, instead of doing the regular duty of the Joint Finance Committee and funding from the state level schools in the regular fashion, schools have received all these federal dollars, and therefore some members of the Joint Committee on Finance do not see a need to provide the regular state dollars. Obviously, at the federal level, when these dollars were created and dispersed, the clear intent was COVID, the pandemic, has increased costs. This is money to be delivered to schools on top of what they normally receive to help with those costs. Now at the state level, we're hearing an opposite argument. So now moving to the state level portion, when they took up that portion of their duties this afternoon at the Joint Finance level, they put forward a motion that really is unprecedented in a time where funds are actually available. And there will be, under the motion that they passed today, no per pupil increase under the revenue limit. There will be no per pupil increase in something called per pupil categorical aid. So school districts across the state, ever since Governor Thompson back in the early 90s, have relied upon a basic inflationary increase to the per pupil amount. And it's a very basic increase. It is in essence, keep your head above water increase, because the state recognizes inflation and that there are inflationary costs. So at a bare minimum, the state has traditionally provided a per pupil amount that is somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 per pupil, roughly. And this goes back again to the early 1990s. Today, that number is zero. There will not be an increase or an inflationary increase. The other thing that we saw with the budget motion that they passed today, where the governor has clearly put emphasis on supporting our students with disabilities. We've seen the Speaker's Task Force on Urban Education, Rural Education, the Blue Ribbon Commission on Education. We've had a lot of commissions studying these issues, and those commissions have all recognized the need to put more funding into supporting students with disabilities. The governor recommended a 50% reimbursement rate. What was passed today was possibly 30. And I say possibly 30 because the governor provided a guarantee. The governor used language, some sufficient language, which means whatever it costs to maintain that 50% level, the state will fund it. What was passed today did not include that some sufficient language. And as we saw 2 years ago with the budget, when there was an attempt to get to 30%, we are actually only at around 28%. So that if things play out in a similar fashion, we're more or less level funding on a percentage basis, special education. And then an additional thing that, when I say there was this additional thing that didn't happen, a press release was put out this morning before the Joint Committee on Finance, and it said that nearly $500 million will be added to the K-12 budget. That is not true, and that did not happen, because $350 million of that stated amount is put into something that's being euphemistically called a education stabilization fund. But as the motion makes clear, the language of the motion is this can go to K-12 education or some other need or some other cause. So quite literally, the $350 million that's described does not go to K-12 education. It is not allocated to K-12 education. And in their analysis that came out this afternoon, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and the Legislative Fiscal Bureau number that we believe is closer to what's actually being allocated is only $128 million total across the state. That's less than 10% of what the governor proposed in his budget. I believe WASB makes the point, the School Boards Association makes the point that it's less than a quarter of what we even saw in the last state budget. So no per pupil increase, kind of level percentage funding for students with disabilities, and a few other categorical aids thrown in. But really, again, in a moment where the funding is there to at least do the bare minimum that the state has a tradition of doing, that is not even being offered. And then the last part, if I can bring those two things together, is this. I mentioned the maintenance of effort provisions when I first began to speak. And according to the information we're seeing, based on the action that was taken today, the state does not appear to be meeting those provisions at this point in the budget process. The Joint Committee on Finance, by providing this bare minimum level of funding that they are, is not in compliance with the maintenance of effort requirements that they agreed to when they signed off on receiving the federal money. So a big concern here is the rhetoric was school districts are receiving all these federal dollars. Therefore, the state does not have to put as much into funding K-12 education, which obviously from our point of view doesn't make much sense in the tradition of the state or just the reality of budgeting. But now even the federal dollars that districts are told they should rely upon are at threat because the state does not appear to be meeting this maintenance of effort requirement. So I apologize for kind of describing this in a circle, but that is where we are, and that is what took place today. They could, for example, take that $350 million that is currently not going to K-12 education, and they could put $350 million into the special education funding program. The governor in the second year of his biennium is asking for $413 million, and that the 413 would get us to a 50% reimbursement rate. So certainly, even as they've discussed this $350 million figure, even if they put that amount into special education funding, that would be a start from literally zero on a per pupil funding increase. But that's where we are today. And I know that federal level officials are looking at this, and we'll have to walk forward and see where things are. But really kind of an unprecedented day, unfortunately, at the state capitol. I know I've said a lot there. I'm happy to answer questions if I can, if you have them.
Thank you. I'll go to questions in a second. I just want to say in a sentence that this is an outrageous set of actions by evil people who are jeopardizing all the children in this state, particularly Black and brown children. It is something that is unseen, unheard of, and outrageous. So, Director Halloran, then Gandhi, and we'll get the queue up. Okay, go ahead, Director Oga.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand. So if we don't, if nothing, no further action takes place, the budget does not increase, they don't put that 350 back or whatever. Is ESSER 2 then at risk? So we would not get the ESSER 2 funds, or are you saying if this budget were to pass as it is, we wouldn't be eligible for ESSER 3? Because the budget that we're voting on includes a plan for ESSER 2. So I'm trying to understand.
Right. Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Good question, Chris.
President Peterson, Director Heller. Yes, it does make sense. And I don't know that I have a clear answer. Where we are in this process is as of April, the ESSER $2 were available to be tapped into by public school districts. So that's another part of this conversation that, these dollar figures are displayed. There were 3 allocations. I don't think there's a complete understanding, and to be honest, perhaps there is intentional confusion being sown about the fact that the CARES dollars, ESSER 1, are largely being spent, because that was a year ago, and districts, it took a little while, frankly, for us to even access those dollars, but districts are in the process of spending that money. ESSER 2 only became available in April. And districts are in the process of, I think we're at the tail end of this school year. Those funds just became available in April. Obviously, there's a timeline for us to spend those dollars going forward, but we are already into tapping into those. And now the fact of the matter is that the ARP funds that are being called ESSER 3 dollars, we have not been able to access those as of yet. So when you ask your question, what I think of is the fact that we are already accessing the ESSER 2 funds and ESSER 1 funds. And I don't know how it would work out if we run afoul of the maintenance of effort as a state. The fact that the ARP funds, this third round of funds, we haven't been able to access those yet. And now this controversy is being created. I think that is, in my mind, the concern that I have for those dollars. That's a significant amount of money that we obviously need and have already discussed how to use appropriately to protect people, help students, what have you. And I should note, and I apologize for making this sound worse, but here we go. This proportional calculation gets worse, not better, going forward. Because as I mentioned, the direction of this maintenance of effort provision is you can't spend more in other areas and less in K-12. So they've done this, what I'm calling almost an unprecedented act of such a low level of funding today. They are already outside the bounds of maintenance of effort. They will need to proceed with their budget at the state level and spend money now for transportation and other areas. So if we see increases in those other areas and they fall further away from what is required on a proportional basis, it gets even more difficult to come back into compliance. So we are very concerned, obviously. We don't think our students should be put at risk. Frankly, no students in the state should be put at risk. And again, Senator LaTanya Johnson, Representative Goyke, and others really rose to the defense of students and schools today, and credit and thanks to them. But it is a very concerning issue.
Dr. Gokagandhi.
So is the maintenance of effort provision, was that codified? So are they out of compliance with law, or was that just a goodwill, we're going to do this, you'll get this money, or is there a legal case to be made that they are not complying with what they legally told us they were going to do?
Director Gokagandhi, the information was there. We've seen some interesting statements today from the co-chair of the committee. One was, I think, cleaned up right away. The other one, I think there's still some question on. There was initially a comment that somehow the governor had crafted a deal that the Joint Finance Committee was unaware of. The governor had nothing to do with this. The governor has, oversight over other federal funds that have come in, but the agreement on maintenance of effort was made by the Joint Committee on Finance. The Department of Public Instruction, in their briefing memo to the committee, makes clear the maintenance of effort provisions. And so when they signed off on ESSER 1, ESSER 2, that agreement was in there. And I think the federal government, and before the federal government was going to release the funds, they wanted approval on that agreement. So in terms of where this might go legally, I'm not sure at this point, but the federal government, there's legislative intent that was made clear through the maintenance of effort language. There's further guidance being deployed from the Department of Education, but this shouldn't be a surprise. The federal government provided these funds and intended them to be used in a specific way and not seeing a supplanting situation. South Milwaukee, the school district of South Milwaukee came out with a press release yesterday where they just described this as malfeasance. So as we're starting to use some of the legal language, that's where we are. It is stunning. There seem to be violating an agreement that they made at the present moment. And their responsibility, the level of state funding, is just extraordinarily low.
Thank you. Other comments by committee members? Director Leonard.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, hopefully. So first of all, is there any other tools in our toolbox to fight this beyond the legal level? I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that the no pupil per person increase is something that's over and above, not part of this in a way. Do I understand that correctly? I guess I'll ask that question first.
Yeah, Director Leonard,
all right.
When I refer to the per pupil increase or the lack of a per pupil increase, that's the portion of the conversation that is traditionally at the state budget level. So they can do that if they would like to, but we have a clear tradition in the state where, given the fact that providing for K-12 education is actually part of the state constitution, there has been a traditional, minimal increase attached to the rate of inflation that they have always done. They don't necessarily have to, and they're not out of compliance with anything on the federal level on that. But that it's just something that is unprecedented when there is so much state revenue available.
Director Leonard, follow up?
No, I'm good.
Any other comment or question? Director O'Halloran.
So last biennium, obviously, I was like, hey, I'll just walk to Madison. Is there anything that any actions you would recommend? Should I walk to Burlington, see if, Speaker Voss is home, or statements that as a board we can make, or actions we can take that you think might turn this bus around?
Director Halloran, yes. It's been a long year. It's been really tough, all the way around. And so asking people to do more is perhaps difficult. And frankly, scheduling a budget meeting with this type of action before the Memorial Day weekend, I don't think is a coincidence. Meaning people need to pay attention. Everybody's ready for summer to begin and to move forward. But what I think needs to be done really to support our schools is to help educate people about what happened today, clear away some of the confusion, if there is any, about what's being said that happened versus what actually happened. And I think the clarifying moment is that there's zero. It's not hard to describe nothing. There is not a per pupil increase. And whether you're in Winter, Wisconsin, or Superior, or Darlington, or Milwaukee, your per pupil amount, which you usually expect to go up, is not. So if you're in that district right now, you're aware of that. So as we get into, past the Memorial Day weekend into next week, I do think communicating to people, getting people to call their legislators. If individuals want to call in different districts, and certainly in this one, obviously, Call your superintendents or your board members, work with each other, because the next place this goes is to the floor of the Senate and the floor of the Assembly. This is not over. This is at the committee level. So we will see, presumably, all indications are, and if I'm wrong, I will apologize next month, but all indications are that the next revenue estimates will see even more revenue. And there's just really no reason to do it this way. There are funds available to do the basics for our students. So calling, writing, working together, reaching out through those networks, raising the alarm about really how bad this is. I think those efforts are needed. I think they can be effective. We're hearing from our partners. We talk about the Rural Schools Alliance and WASB and the school administrators. People are paying attention, and I think we need to gather that energy, not give up, and really push for what our kids need.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what's the next item of business?
Mr. Chair, before we move on to our next item of business, with our court reporter being on, I want to make sure that the board's vote for the last item, the superintendent's communications number 3, is correct. The vote is 1 temporarily absent, 8 ayes. The motion passes to approve the administration's recommendation relative to seeking waivers.
Right. And I'll just say, in terms of what Mr. Thiel has said, one of the frustrations of living in Milwaukee is we have great representatives, but they're already on our side. I mean, it's not a frustration; it's great. But the people who are really prohibiting this funding to go through as it should are out of our range. And so, to the degree we have any contacts around the state, that's important to encourage they contact their representative. And if the board would like, I'd be happy to work with the vice president and also Mr. Thiel to come up with a letter or a statement that we could all sign. I see a lot of nods. I just volunteered Vice President Taylor. Is that okay? And Mr. Thiel, would you be willing to help?
Certainly.
Okay. And yes, Director O'Halloran?
And I would like, if we can share that through, we have our newsletters, the subscription services, and I would like that to be shared with the people in my district so that they can also take action, please.
Right. So what we'll do is try to summarize as clearly as possible the impact, and then recommend a series of actions that people can take. And if people have particular language or whatever you want to suggest, we'll try to incorporate that. Yes, Director Herndon, comment or question?
Comment. I was just going to say that we should also consider trying to personally go and speak as they get to that stage.
Chris, Mr. Field, could you talk about the possibility of speaking out? Is there any more public hearings on this matter?
There are no. The Joint Committee on Finance held all its public hearings. There may be, that being said, and then it could just move to the floor from Joint Finance. But as we've done in the past, I would not be surprised, given the impact of what's occurred, that there will be gatherings in Madison, or perhaps moments to speak, even if it's not a traditional public testimony role from Joint Finance.
Thank you. I would hope and assume that we act, the statewide teachers union, will take some action on this, and we can keep everybody informed about that as well. And Chris, if you could help us stay informed what the WASB is doing and other, the Rural Alliance and other people, that would be great. Thank you, everyone. I'll be in touch with all of you, but particularly Vice President Taylor and Chris to start a draft. We'll share it. Okay, we have a lot left to the meeting, and I guess one question I'll ask this the superintendent is, given that there is no zero, that it's a zero what we're going to get, is that affecting our budget all, or did the budget not anticipate any per pupil increase?
President Peterson, members of the board, we have a zero. We based our budget off a zero increase, that the state was not going to give us an increase. So our budget is set off of that already.
That's good to know. Good foresight. Unfortunate that it came true. Okay, let's next item on the agenda, Madam Secretary.
The next item on the agenda is a communication from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, and this is the monthly report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present the report?
Thank you, Chair Peterson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. That item is before you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does the board wish to make any comments? Seeing none, we will now have reports of standing committees. Since public hearing was given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be giving public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, I'm the president. What is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, what's the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside from this report? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. No items of this report have been set aside for separate consideration.
Do any board members wish any items to be set aside from this report? Seeing done, Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. This month, there are 3 reports from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. There are no items set aside from reports 1 and 2. Item number 2 of report number 3 is the informational overview and action on the 2021-22 superintendent's proposed budget. That has been set aside for final action.
Do any members wish any items to be set aside besides that which has been set aside? Okay, so now what I need is a motion and action on the motion for the balance of the reports of the standing committees, so that we're basically approving that. Vice President Taylor?
I move approval of the remaining of the items. Balance of the report.
Director Herndon has seconded it.
Mm-hmm.
Secretary, please call the roll.
On Vice President Taylor's motion to approve the balance of the reports, seconded by Director Herndon. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what's the next item?
Mr. President, we are now back to the items that were set aside. The first item set aside is from the report number 3 of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. The informational overview and action on the 2021-22 superintendent's proposed budget. The recommendation is that the board adopt the proposed budget, including the resolutions for the school operations, construction, and extension funds. As a reminder, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board's membership is necessary to adopt the construction fund resolution.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Given that voting requirement, if there are no objections, we will split the question. Are there any objections to splitting these questions? Okay. Before we call the questions, are there any final comments from the administration? Administration.
Chair, President Peterson, members of the board, I just want to personally thank the board, the Office of Finance, and the Office of Administration for all of the work that has gone into this process. And thank you.
Okay. Are there any final comments from board members about this budget? Madam Secretary, please call the first question.
The first question is on adoption of the proposed 2021-22 budget, inclusive of resolutions for the school's operations and extension funds, which reads as follows. Resolved that pursuant to provisions of Section 119.46 Wisconsin statutes relating to the school operations fund, the Board of School Directors hereby advises the Common Council that an amount of $1,091,167,676 will be required for the operation of the Milwaukee Public Schools, for the repair and keeping in order of school buildings and equipment, and the making of material improvements of school property during the 2021 fiscal year. In addition, pursuant to action taken by the Board of School Directors at its regular meeting of September 22nd, 2011, the Board of School Directors is required to advise the Common Council that an amount to be determined will be required for the operations of the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, and that amount will be required for the operations. An amount to be determined will be required for the operations of the Milwaukee Public Schools, and that a total of an amount to be determined thereof is to be raised by a tax levy on all real and personal property in the city of Milwaukee, subject to taxation for the Milwaukee Public Schools purposes in 2021, pursuant to provisions of Section 66.07, Parent 1, Parent E, Wisconsin statutes, said amount to be raised by tax levy being in addition of the money to be received from state aids, shared taxes, and from other miscellaneous sources. And relative to the extension fund, resolved that pursuant to the provisions of Section 119.47 Wisconsin statutes relating to the extension fund, the Board of School Directors hereby advises the Common Council that an amount of $34,839,247 will be required for the maintenance of playgrounds, recreation centers, and similar activities during the 2021 fiscal year, and then an amount of $27,225,000 thereof is to be raised by a tax levy on all real and personal property in the city of Milwaukee, subject to taxation for Milwaukee Public Schools purposes in 2021 pursuant to the provisions of Section 65.07, Parent 1, Parent G, Wisconsin statutes, said amount being required in addition to other miscellaneous sources.
And let me just be clear, this requires a 50% plus one vote, right? Not a 2/3?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this vote actually requires just a simple majority. The construction fund requires a 2/3 vote.
Yes. Thank you. So what is the pleasure of the board with respect to this resolution? Director O'Halloran.
I move we adopt the resolution.
Vice President Taylor.
Second it.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the school operations and school extension funds, seconded by Director Taylor on the resolutions as read into the record. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Aye.
President Peterson.
Aye.
That is 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, what is the next question before us?
The next question before the body is adoption of the resolution for the construction funds, which reads, resolved that pursuant to the provisions of Section 119.48 of the Wisconsin statutes, the Board of School Directors hereby advises the Common Council that an amount of $4,049,797 will be required for the 2021 fiscal year construction fund budget for the purposes, and that it is to provide in accordance with Section 65.07, Parent 1, Parent F, Wisconsin statutes, $2,923,868 by a tax levy on all real and personal property in the city of Milwaukee, subject to taxation for Milwaukee Public Schools purposes in 2021, said amount to be in addition to money received from other miscellaneous sources.
What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this resolution?
Move to adopt the resolution.
A motion by Director Gokul Gandhi. Is there a second? Director Herndon. Director Herndon? Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
On Director Gokul Gandhi's motion to approve the resolution read into the record by the relative to the construction funds, seconded by Director Herndon. On the motion as read, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any other items of regular business?
Yes, Mr. President. There are 2 items of regular business. The first is the reports of the board's delegates. The first delegate report is that of the board's delegate to the Title I Advisory Council.
Excuse me. Is it our delegate? Would you like to make a report? Dr. Herndon?
I submitted my report for CISA 1.
Okay. Thank you very much. And our board delegate to the Title I District Advisory Council that's Mr. Leonard?
Yes, I have not had any contact with them up to this point yet. I have not been just starting to get involved with the District Advisory Council, so.
No worries. That's
Mr.
fine.
Chair and Director Leonard, the Advisory Council did send information to bring everybody up to speed. So that information is attached, and we will make sure that we stay in contact to make sure that you get all of the information for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, Madam Secretary, the next report was CISA, and Director Herndon said it was attached, I believe.
It is attached, so noted.
Okay, Madam Secretary, next report.
The final report is that from our delegate to the Head Start Policy Council.
And that report is before you. I will just say very quickly that Head Start Policy Council went through a federal review this month and did a phenomenal job. I look forward to hearing the feedback that I know we'll be getting from them, but I'm sure it will be stellar.
Right. Okay, Madam Secretary, what is the next item of regular business?
The next item of regular business is the report of the president of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
That report is attached as well. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask, either now or in the future. Madam Secretary, are there any other items of unfinished business?
Unfinished business. We have one item of unfinished business, and that is the designation of the board's representative to the library board.
Yes, my recommendation of that is that Erica Simpson, Director Simpson, be that representative. If board is in agreement with that, somebody could make a motion to that effect. Is that what we should do, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chair, I took your nomination as a motion. We would need a second.
Director O'Halloran.
Okay.
Will the Secretary please read the roll?
On Director Simpson's motion, on President Peterson's motion to nominate Director Simpson to serve on the library board as the board's delegate, seconded by Director O'Halloran. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, are there any items of new business for referral to committee?
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn tonight, we do need to go back to the budget to hear from the administration, but we will continue through the agenda, but before we adjourn. The next item is our items of new business, and we have 5 items of new business for referral. The first item is action on a request to revise Administrative Policy and Procedure 4.07, Student Nutrition and Wellness.
And we'll refer that to Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. What's the next item of new business?
The next item of new business is action on a request to revise Administrative Policy 8.28, Student Discipline, and Administrative Policy 8.31, Student Suspension.
We'll refer that to the Committee of Legislation, Rules, and Policies. What would be the next item of new business?
The next item of new business is action on a request to revise Administrative Policy 8.42, Student Records.
And we'd refer that to the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. And the next item of new business.
The next item is action on a technical amendment to the Board Rule 1.02, regular board meetings.
And we'll refer that to the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. And any other item of new business?
The last item of new business is action on a request to revise Administrative Policy 3.01, the annual operating budget.
And we'll refer that to the same Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral to committee?
Mr. Chair, we have no communications this month.
Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions for referral to committee?
Yes, Mr. President, we do have 4 resolutions for referral. The first resolution is Resolution 2122-001 by Director O'Halloran on charter schools.
That resolution will be referred to the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. Madam Secretary, what's the next resolution?
The next resolution is Resolution 2122-03 by Directors Peterson and O'Halloran on a land agreement.
That resolution will be referred to the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement. Madam Secretary, what's the next resolution?
The next resolution is Resolution 2122-4 by Directors Peterson on Middle and High School Equity Work Group.
And Director Taylor would like to co-sponsor that resolution as well.
So noted.
That resolution will be referred to the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation. Madam Secretary, what's the next resolution?
The next resolution is Resolution 2122-5 by Director Peterson on a community schools work group.
And that would, I know that Director Gokul Gandhi would like to co-sponsor that as well. That resolution will be referred to the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation.
So noted.
Madam Secretary, you said that we needed to return to the budget for a commentary by the administration at this time?
That is correct.
Let's do so.
Okay, President Peterson. President Peterson, members of the board, a couple things that I need to make the board aware of. We have a date that's incorrect in the resolution that we need to address. And also, this is the first time that we have had ESSER funds to vote on, and we need to vote on the ESSER 2 funds as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Secretary, how should we proceed?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, let's first address the date issue that the administration would like to correct.
Okay.
Please indicate how the resolution should read.
President Peterson, members of the board, for each of the 3 resolutions, one of the dates is incorrect. It says 2021 fiscal year instead of 2022. And let me read the full sentence for each one. The whole thing's a sentence. But after the full dollar amount will be required for the operation of the Milwaukee Public Schools for the repair and keeping in order of school buildings and equipment and the making of material improvements to the school property during the 2022 fiscal year.
So noted.
Likewise, for construction fund, the same exact area. Council that the amount of $4,049,797 will be required for the 2022 fiscal year construction fund budget purposes.
So noted.
Are there any other? Excuse me. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. In the extension fund, then, that the amount of $34,839,247 will be required for the maintenance of playgrounds, recreation centers, and similar activities during the 2022 fiscal year.
So noted.
Thank you.
And question, 4 lines down, does that 2021 have to be changed or not?
That is actually correct.
Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, can we do this all in one motion, or do we have to do it in 3 separate motions?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're going to ask the board to take action on the resolutions as amended for the school operations, school construction, and extension funds as modified with the date of the fiscal year 2022.
Thank you. Thank you. So I need a motion for that. Could I have a motion by one of our board members, please? Director Carr. In a second. Director Taylor. And so, Director Carr, do you want to restate, state the motion or do your best?
Help me out here.
So the motion, okay, so the board, in following Robert's Rules of Order, the motion is to rescind its previous action. The board is voting to rescind its previous action on the budget and moves to approve the school operations, construction fund, and extension funds for the FY22 fiscal year as modified and read into the record.
Okay. I move for approval to rescind previous action and move to approve school operation funds for construction and extension funds. And yes, I'm going to leave it there because I don't remember the rest.
For FY22.
For FY22. Thank you.
Very good, Director Carr. And Vice President Taylor.
Yeah, I just got a question. Not that I want us to have to go over this again, but
Can you second it first, then we'll just discuss it?
Second.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You have a question, please.
Okay, so when we're rescinding it, if we following Robert Rules of Order, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't we have to do the rescinding vote first and then do the other one to move approval? Like
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you can do it all simultaneously in one vote. So you're taking action to 1, rescind previous action, and 2, approve the school operations, extension, and construction funds as read into the record with the modification for the action to reflect fiscal year 22.
Okay.
Okay, so without objections, we'll do that. Okay, Madam Secretary, please read the roll.
On the motion as read
roll.
into the record by on Director Carr's motion to approve the action, and Vice President Taylor's motion to second the action as read into the record.
Right.
Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Vice President Taylor.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes. The motion passes.
Okay, Madam Secretary, I believe we have one item left, which is voting on the ESSER 2 budget. Does administration wish to make a comment?
President Peterson, members of the board, the administration have no comments at this time.
Okay. Obviously, we discussed those items and moved some our amendments included both the budget, the main budget, and the ESSER 2 budget. So we have,
Mr. Chair, I hate to do this to you, but I definitely would not want you to violate any legal requirements for noticing, but I need a 5-minute recess. At this point, I am looking and we are not publicly noticed to take action on the ESSER funds as a separate item. But I would like a 5-minute recess to review that.
So granted.
Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess. We will note the time and return at 8:10.
would you please repeat what we have done and clarify?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you so much for the brief recess just to go over the board's actions and to make sure that the funds were stated correctly relative to the construction fund, operations fund, and extension fund. Those are the funds that the board just voted on for FY22. So the motion in its entirety would be to approve the superintendent's 21-22 proposed budget, inclusive of the resolutions that were read into the record for the FY22 fiscal year. Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to be sure that all of the information was there. So all of the items that were publicly noticed and listed are included in the proposed budget, as well as the resolutions that were read into the record.
Director Herndon?
I moved to approve the superintendent's 21-22 proposed budget, including the resolutions. Did I get it all?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Members of the board, that is the motion that that is the action that the board has just taken, is to improve the superintendent's proposed budget, inclusive of the resolutions for the school operations fund, construction fund, and extension fund for FY22.
And so what I hear you saying is that we do not need to make a motion. You were just clarifying that that was the case and it was all inclusive.
That is correct.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any other items, Madam Secretary, for us to talk about tonight?
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Hold on one second. Looks like Director O'Halloran has.
Yeah, Director O'Halloran.
I was just going to bring forward the tradition from Director Phillips.
Oh, yes.
Yes, on a previous item to thank all of the new hires, promotions, appointments. Thank them for bringing their talents to serve our students and communities. Congratulations on your new role and go forth and do great things.
Thank you so much, Director O'Halloran. Thank you. Okay, good night.
Good night. Good night.
Have a good night.
Be well.
Love on
Have
somebody.
a great night. It's so early.
Yes, yeah.